everyone, it's Ange. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. So, it's the end of November, and that means Christmas is almost here. And that means Christmas shopping. So I've been trying to figure out what I want to get for Joe for Christmas. And of course he's made a list and sent it out to everyone, and there's some things on there that I'm going to get for him. But I had an idea that I know nobody else is going to get for him, and that he's been talking to me about for probably at least a year at this point, and it has to do with this guy right here. We've had this coffee table for since we moved into our first apartment, actually. And that's, I don't know, 5 years. It's been a while. If you know anything about us, you know that we love watching anime and reading manga and everything that has to do with Japan. Yeah, we are weebs, pretty much. And one thing that we see in so many anime is a kotatsu. And something about just sitting under the blanket with the warm heater underneath and working on your stuff at your coffee table in your living room just seems like such a cozy thing. And non-stop, Joe's been saying, we should get a kotatsu. We gotta get a kotatsu. I'd love to have one. And it would be so nice to have it in the winter time. Joe likes to sit at this coffee table and do his work sometimes, but I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little tall for sitting at and doing work at. We've had some ideas before, like there's IKEA hacks where you can take an IKEA coffee table and make it into a little kotatsu. But what I thought I would do for Christmas for Joe is to make a kotatsu for him. Now, my dad was a carpenter for most of his life, and he has access to a lot of tools and woodworking supplies that I can use. So I'm gonna take measurements of this table right here, and I'm going to make him a kotatsu that's exactly these dimensions of the same table, and I'm gonna get a blanket and a heater, and gonna draw our own plans for it, and we're gonna go buy the wood and put it together. I haven't done anything like this in a long time, but me and my dad did build a boat once, completely out of wood. So I think if we can build a boat that works and floats and drives on water, I think we'll be able to make a table. So let's get on drawing that plan. So this is the coffee table in question. As you can see, it kind of comes up really tall on me, so it's kind of hard to write or eat or do anything from this table. So we're definitely gonna have to make it shorter. I know kotatsus are about 15 inches tall, which is perfect elbow height for doing things at. So I'm gonna take that into account. Now, let's measure. So we've got just about 4 feet, just about 2 feet, 23.5 inches maybe? 19.25? Let's say 19.25 inches. Okay, time to make a plan. I'm gonna write everything in this notebook, just so Joe doesn't decide he wants to sneak a peek and look at it. So a lot of kotatsus kind of have this framing, and then you put the heater right here, and then the top rests on top of that. Now that that looks done, it's time to call up my dad.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
Okay, Joe is at coffee with his friend, so I wanna build the coffee table for him.
Okay.
So I drew my little drawings. It's basically the same thing we were looking at doing before. After about 2 hours on the phone with my dad and reworking the parts list a few times, I think now it's time we go to Lowe's.
Okay, so now measure out 4 foot.
The very first thing we needed to do for the kotatsu was to cut down our boards to size. We ended up buying 1x6 by 8 foot boards, which were twice the width we had originally planned. So first we needed to cut the boards in half to 4 feet, and then in half long ways so that we had the right width for each plank on the tabletop. You'll see what I mean once we get all of the boards together. My dad had to teach me how to use most of these tools. Even though I've built stuff before, it's been a while since I've used any of these things. We had pretty limited space to work with. Usually my dad would take his tools out of the trailer, but it was so cold outside that we decided it would be better to work in the small heated trailer than out in the cold. There are some things that my dad did not want me to do, like using the table saw, so I was mostly just there for moral support while he did a lot of the power tool stuff. We wanted to make sure that the different colors of the maple were arranged nicely on the tabletop, so we spent a while arranging and rearranging each of the boards until we ended up with something that we both thought looked nice. The next step was probably my favorite thing to do in the whole building process, the biscuit cutter. The biscuit cutter is a specialized tool that cuts little grooves into the wood, and then you take these little wood chips, yes, they're called biscuits, and put them into the grooves before putting the two pieces of wood together. The biscuit gives the seam more strength than if you just used glue to attach the two pieces together.
Pull the trigger. That's it. Nice and do it.
Nice.
Go to the next one. Just pick everything up.
I'll let my dad explain how we glued together the pieces for the tabletop.
What we're going to do, the process is going to be some glue. Then you're going to take a finger, spread the glue out, put your biscuits in,
Do you want to put glue in the biscuit
and
hole?
then we're going to go, put glue, like when I come across with the glue, we're going to go down into there, make sure they're in the biscuit hole, and then we're going to take and give this a nice edge. We're going to go same thing here, put the biscuits in.
And then put them together.
We're gonna stack this one here like that, boom. Glue this one, put that one in the next, and we're gonna balance her up somewhat as close as we can.
Okay.
And work our way across.
After clamping the top together, we needed to wipe off all of the excess glue from the top, just to make our lives a little easier when it came time to sand. What we needed to do now was to cut the pieces of wood that would be the border pieces to the tabletop. And apparently, measuring all of these pieces was more difficult for us than we thought it would be. I'm not exactly sure where we messed up in our calculations, but the whole tabletop ended up being a bit shorter in each direction than we originally wanted it to be. Oops.
Disco!
Whoa, whoa, yay! tabletop we built was too big to fit on either of the table saws my dad had, so we needed to freehand cut each of the short edges to make them straight. My dad had a great idea. He used an extra piece of wood as a guide for the saw just to make sure he wouldn't cut too far off the mark. And yes, the battery died on us in the middle of cutting. You can see the exact moment where Dad realized the mistake we had made.
3/8, so we're 3 3/4. 3 3/4 short, right? 3/8 inch and 3/8, 3 3/4. 3 3/4 off of
3 3/4 total short.
I'm gonna double check downstairs.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna take both of these back outside.
Oh boy.
All right, go back to the miter box. We're gonna put a 45 on here, 45 on one of that. We're gonna bring it in. We're gonna line it up here. We're gonna put a mark over here. Cut the other 45, and then we're gonna clamp these in, hold them in there. Then we're gonna fit. Then we'll cut our ends to fit our ends. And what we're gonna do, then we're gonna glue these pieces on.
Biscuits?
Yep, biscuit, and glue the two ends on. Fitting these, but not gluing these ends, because then we're going to have to take, once this sets, we're going to take the clamps and go this way.
Okay.
And clamp them that way.
And thus began our journey to get the correct angles cut into the border pieces. We were assembling the table in my parents' basement, but all of the saws were outside in the tool trailer, so we need to go upstairs, cut the angle, bring it back downstairs, check if it fit, go back upstairs, cut the angle a little more, go back downstairs, check if it fit, until all of our pieces fit together and we were ready to biscuit, glue, and clamp everything together. It's hard to tell where the boards are.
Yeah, right?
Gluing the edges on was the same process we used to glue the tabletop together, except we could only glue 2 sides at a time. You just push this whole thing, will slide this time. While the first 2 edges were setting in place, we started to make the base of the table, which, yes, we needed to recalculate the size of because of how we messed up on the tabletop.
Over here.
Originally, we were going to glue and screw the frame of the table together, but we didn't want there to be any visible screws on the outside, so we decided to use a picture frame clamp and just glue this top part of the frame together. Look at all the sawdust on my glasses. Oh my gosh. I cannot see anything. During the days in between the times I could come out to my parents' house to work on the table, my dad had cut up the rest of the pieces that we would need to build the table, which was something that I wouldn't have been able to help with anyway. The first thing we did on day 2 was to use the Craig tool on our support pieces to make some pockets for our pocket screws. The Craig tool is really cool. It clamps onto a piece of wood and easily allows you to drill diagonal holes into the board. Your screws can then be drilled in and are hidden in the pockets. It's perfect for when you don't want screw holes on the outside of your project. These 2 support pieces were mostly there just to hold the heater in place, but they will provide a little extra support in the table's frame.
So what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna put these in, see the lines and the X, we're gonna cover the X.
Okay.
Make sure your screw holes are on the inside. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull this apart a little bit so we're not really tight. I'm gonna get you in there.
And here is where we messed up again.
What if you want to? Do you want to sand this?
I can sand that. That's easy.
Here's your 80.
Just do 80 or do it all smooth?
Well, you're gonna do 80 first to get the glue off.
Uh-huh.
You probably don't have to do a lot of 80 on that one.
Did we get the wrong ones?
That one is.
We got the wrong ones. Stick it to the
Hell, I thought we looked at that really good.
I thought we did too. Oh boy.
Let's see if we can.
So there are a few different types of backings you can get for your sandpaper. Cloth, film, hook and loop, which is like Velcro, and PSA, which is like a sticker. The type of orbital sander my dad has uses the hook and loop style sandpaper discs. And you know what can of sandpaper we got for it? The sticky one. And we had already opened it, so we couldn't return it. So we had to make do. Take an old piece of hook and loop sandpaper, put that on the sander, and then stick a piece of the sticky sandpaper to the hook and loop sandpaper, and hope that it worked. Legs together was easy. It was just a matter of putting the glue on, then clamping the 2 pieces together. And then it began. Lots and lots and lots of sanding. My dad was nice enough to do some more sanding in his free time, but still, day 3 also began with more sanding. The last things in the project we sanded were the frame and the table legs. Finally, the worst part was over. I think I inhaled more sawdust than a human probably should. We tidied up the shop the best we could, but everything in the room was covered in a thin layer of dust. decided that it would be best to wait a few days to let all of the dust settle before moving on to the final steps.
That works, right? Yeah. Keeps you close. All right.
The first thing to do this day was to get one coat of wood sealer on the tabletop so it could dry while we worked on the other parts of the table. Practicing my painting skills on the bottom of the top, my dad was out in the trailer cutting the table legs down to size. Before we got to paint the base, we needed to finish putting all of the pieces together. First thing, put on the legs. Easy. All we needed to do was drill some holes, then glue and screw the legs onto the table. These screws we're using to attach the legs will give extra support to the frame that we only glued together. The final part of the frame that needed to get put on was the base for the heater. This piece would not only add more support to the table, but it would protect the blanket from getting burned once the Kotatsu was turned on. Again, we just drilled some holes, glued, and screwed this into place.
For real. Not for real.
One heater coming up.
For real.
For real. Finally, my dad just drilled some holes through the support pieces so the heater could be screwed in place once the table was all finished. The last thing we needed to do was to get 3 coats of polyacrylic sealer onto every part of the table. It wasn't quick or easy, but it was sure better than all of that sanding. Day 5 was just spent putting the last 2 coats of sealer onto everything, and I didn't want to bore you with hours more footage of my dad and I painting a table. I'm sure you'd rather see how the table came out, right? Well, without further ado, here is the finished table.